All right, all right, all right, all right. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, or good night, wherever you might be, or wherever you may be. Today is Sunday. I believe is November 20th. Let me make sure. Yeah, November 27, 2022. It is now about 9:15 a.m. in Alaska time. I do believe is maybe 1 p.m. in Eastern time, and it might be 9 p.m. somewhere also in Africa, and maybe afternoon in Australia. I'm not too sure. Welcome to my show tonight. I mean, this morning. Welcome to my show this morning. This is the first time to go live about what I'm going to talk about. I'm not too sure if I can be able to share. Let me see if I can be able to share my screen. Let's see here. Just give me a second and I'll definitely um, see. All right. Right. Let's see. All right, there you go. Good morning again. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, or good evening, wherever you may be. Today's presentation is about the recap of a CLIT uh, presentations that I did yesterday at a AWEIL conference in Amarillo, Texas. Um, the presentation is about the causes that killed cultures, language, identity, and traditions. And that's CLIT, CLIT. That's what I call CLIT. It stands for, C stands for culture, L stands for language, I stands for identity, and T stands for tradition. So my presentations about this is to look at the importance, first the cause of um, of CLIT, why CLIT die, um, and also the importance of it, the negative and positive impact on individuals, on a family, on children, on a community, and maybe the entire world. This is the main purpose of that presentation. And the presentation was actually meant to community members, particularly South Sudanese, with the focus on yesterday conference, which was actually a conference that bring the people of AWEIL together to talk about the issues that affected them, the plans that they need to do for our community. I'm a member of that community, for those who do not know. My name is Dr. Ding Ding, and I'm a founder and executive director of Aid and Care and Dr. Ding Ding Foundation. I'm also a teacher at Northwest Arctic Borough School District. Chudik said professor, that's the same title. And have been running a nonprofit organization and in leadership for the last 20 years. And I've taught for about nearly 2 decades. Started in Kenya in 1999 up to today. So I'm kind of like a different combining of different things, being an educator, being a leader, being a researcher, being an activist. That's always been my compassion. But today presentation is not only benefiting the people of AWEIL who attended conference yesterday, it's also very important to all South Sudanese, or even to all Africans, because the importance of cultures, the importance of language, the importance of our identity, the importance of our traditions have been undermined by our own selves. We never think that these are very important to us. But having been doing research about the importance of these four elements, I realized that this defines not just a matter of who we are, but it defines a matter of life and death. And I'm going to tell you how. Many researchers, including anthropologists, linguistics, educators, scientists, have been doing research and question to why immigrants or minority groups, migrants or refugees who have come to Western world lose their languages rapidly. Why? And they have been doing this not just for the sake of employment or job opportunities, but for the sake to find out exactly why and what benefits would the victims of dying languages, dying cultures, dying identity, dying traditions would get. But me, myself, being a member of a community that language is dying, it worries me. That's why I become a part of it to join them and also do research to find out what are the causes and what can we do to stop our language dying. Let's get started. First, if you are Dinka that do not understand English, or any other person do not understand English, I'm sorry to present this one in English because this is just a recap of what I said yesterday, and I was speaking in Dinka yesterday. Next time, I will present it in a pure Dinka without mix of any other languages. But today, it is just opportunity for me to make a recap about this, to make other people who might have attended the meeting yesterday that did not understand Dinka. At the same time, I want to reach out to a lot of people to understand the importance of keeping our cultures, the importance of keeping our languages, the importance of keeping our traditionals. So, excuse me. Now, here is the point. What can we do? What can we do in order for us to keep our language, in order for us to keep our traditions, in order for us to keep our identity, and in order for us to remain in this? First, let's look at the cause of what makes language die, what makes cultures die, what makes traditional die in the Western world. Immigrants and minority groups, cultures and traditions, identity and language die in the places where major languages are predominantly spoken. When I say predominantly, it's widely spoken. Western world has become the dead end of almost every native language. Many factors that cause native language die in Western world include the following, but not limited to the following. One, the research found out that immigrants or minority groups who live in a place where language predominantly control them simply ignore their language. So this is called individual ignorance. The example of that is people feel comfortable of speaking in other people's language than their own language. And when they do that, they simply forget their language, and their language is dying slowly and slowly until to the end. The number two, in particular to children, number two finding is parents' contributions. Parents are found contributed to the death of culture, language, identity, and tradition. Parents use children as their teachers to teach them how to know the hosting country language. For example, in the United States of America, 90% of Dinka children lost their language. They do not understand their language. And a partial of that failure comes from parents. Because at the same time, 90% of parents, when they came to the United States, they did not know English. So it was an opportunity for them to learn from children. When children came back from school, they would just started speaking in English. And the children found themselves to be teachers to teach them. From there, it created a space for children not only simply forget their language, but also simply forget where they come from, what they do as as humans, what their ancestors did, their grandparents, and as well as even traditions. And this is very harmful up to today to our children. But why is it very important to keep a CLIT? Why is it very important to keep culture, language, identity, and traditions? We would just see this one ahead of time, just in a minute. Another problem that causes language lost is dominant languages. Of course, for example, if you are a migrant in the Arab world, of course, a predominant speaking language in Arab world is Arabic. So you will always be exposed to speaking in Arabic. When you come home, you also expose yourself to speak to your children in Arabic. Here, you are giving a space to your children of losing their language. English, well, of course, in the Western world, in the United States of America, in Canada, in Australia, New Zealand, and even in Europe, for example, UK. When you come to this one of these countries, then English is the primary language. So you simply forget your language and you try to learn English from either children and children learn from you, and then there is no space now of keeping your language. Spanish as well, or Swahili, for example, in East Africa. Children also are losing their language in East Africa because of Swahili. Another reason that results in the losing of language is what we call indirect assimilation or acculturation or depossession, discriminatory laws and actions. Assimilation, when you come here to another country, for example, when most people come to the United States, they are simply assimilated into American language, American culture, American way of life. They simply forget their language. Discriminatory laws, the laws that discriminate your language. For example, Sudan, which a part of the people went to war. When Arabs came in, they tried to say your language was not your good language. We had to adopt Arabic language by force. And even, of course, now I would say some language in Sudan, particularly in Western Sudan, Central Sudan, Eastern Sudan, they died because of discriminatory laws that were imposed by the government to speak Arabic only. Another reason, they recently found out that actually kill languages, cultures, traditions, identities is technological invention. The invention of technologies has also contributed to the loss of language. Immigration, of course, as people migrate to the United States, to Canada, they easily lose the language. There is something also come as a surprise called globalization. Globalization. And that is, I believe, this movement from one country to another country, or even moving to another country and stay there for a job or for whatever reason is. Your kids are born there, you never want to come back, and your kids actually found themselves in that society, immersed into that society. They forget language, you too have forgotten the language. And when you forget the language, kids forgot the language, then their kids will not know your language, the original language. Therefore, that language automatically, you know, start dying or dies. Then another thing is what we call disinteresting in exploring the cultures and traditional due to lack of time and interest. A lot of people that come to the Western world are very busy. You go to work from maybe 7 in the morning and come back from 4 p.m. And then you go to bed, prepare yourself, go to bed, and they wake up. Some even go to work from 4 p.m. to midnight. So there is no time right there. And when there's no time, you are given a chance of now having no time to go and do your cultures, promote your cultures, your traditions. It's very hard to do. That is one example, one of the examples that contributed to the loss of CLIT. Another example, which I turn not so much having major impact, is what they call decline in population size. Some research have found out that declining in the population size leads to the less cultural complexity. Now, these are a few things that contributed to the loss of CLIT. Now, let's look at what language are. What is a language? A language is defined as something more important than land. What does this mean? You better have language than having no land. Language is very important because if you lose language, you lose your cultural autonomy, you lose your intellectual, you lose your sovereignty, you lose your spiritual and heritage values. Language unlocks people knowledge about secrets, about wisdoms, about spiritual attitudes, about artistics, and about also mythology, mythological tales. In other words, telling the stories. And of course, the stories, surroundings, and nature. Language is a symbolic of culture, is a symbolic of traditions, is symbolic of customs, and is symbolic of identity. This is one of the most important part of language. Language also keeps people values and their humanity. Language defines who you are. Language makes you well respected. Language makes you like a really human beings. People who speak, and this is what research says, and this is very important to parents, especially children who speak and maintain their language, have higher level of well-being, better education outcomes, and less high risk drug and alcohol use. For example, in my culture, a young man, a young girl are not allowed to drink because when they drink, people will turn away from them. Nobody will marry a girl that drinks. At the same time, no girls would accept a young man that drinks because drinking is good for elders because elders are responsible. They can handle drinking. But young guys, youth, for example, when they start drinking, what do? They end up with violence. They end up doing violence. And that's where now you see sometimes when they get involved in alcohol use, that's why now you see gun silence. Gun is never silenced in our societies. And a society where the higher number of youths involved in drinking has also high risk of insecurity. So it is very important that our culture maintain us. Our culture, our tradition, our language guide us into a process of where we can be a successful individuals. That's the one beautiful part and the important part of knowing your culture, knowing your language, knowing your tradition. Another thing that language helps children connected to their ancestors histories, their cultures and heritage. Language also help people to connect to their culture, their language, a country, and even their identity. So it is very important to keep your language. The research also have found out that the places where children, people, or people generally speak their native language have a very low rates of suicide, and especially low rates of suicide among children in schools and in communities. So it is very important that let your kids maintain their language. Children who speak their language, native language, also experience less bullying in schools. And you may agree with me that bullying is now major problems. Is one of the major problems, actually number one problems in school right now. In the United States, for example, every single day a child dies as a result of bullying. So it is very important. Don't take it lightly. It is very important to make sure your kids maintain their native language. The researchers also found out that when you speak your language, you know your culture, you know your traditions, you know your identity, you are a citizen. What does this mean? It doesn't mean that you're not a citizen. For example, I am a citizen of the United States. I was not born here. Okay. But if I don't know my language, if I don't know my language, how would they know that I'm a citizen unless I say it? Even now, most of the time, that when people ask me, "Are you a citizen? Where are you from?" They know I'm not from here. They know I was not born from here. Having looked at me physically, my color, they know. A lot of people know that I was not born in the United States. So they ought to ask where I came from. That shows my identity. That shows that I am who I am. Okay. So it shows that when I know my language, when I know my culture, when I know my identity, when I know my traditions, then I am a citizen already. But if I do not know, then it says that somebody doesn't know language, culture, traditional identity, that person is stateless. Stateless. Okay, so it is very important to maintain your culture, very important to maintain your language, very important to maintain your traditions and your identity, because that defines who you are, and that's what it means to be a citizen. Okay. Now, a lot of people ask questions. What happened when language dies? What happened when language dies? People are less than humans. And in language, it is a matter of life and death. Language, it is a matter of life and death. So when language dies, its people develop mental health problems and psychological impeding. And this is going on in our communities in the United States, in Canada, in Australia, and even as far as in Africa. When you lose your language, you don't think of anything else. You're just only controlled by by the language of a country, of a place where you live. There are many things that your language can tell not to do. But there are many things that other people's language can tell you to do when they are really bad to your life. But when you know your language, you can think. You can think about your culture. You can think about your traditions because they are related. But when you don't know your language and you know the language of others, you don't know their culture. So your mind can tell you anything you can do. They can also give you mental sickness. A place where language dies, a place where people lost their language, has a very high rates of suicide. And I can prove that to you right now where I am in Alaska. I worked in two places before I came to Casville. And those places I worked, one of those places, the entire residents or citizens of that village lost their language. And in that place, suicide is very high among young people. And when I read about this, I was like, oh, yeah, this is true. This is true. But where I am right now, they know the language. Kids speak their language. It is very rare to hear there is a suicide where I am right now. That proves that your language is a very important. And that's why I agree with the statement says language is a matter of life and death. Because if a place where people lose their language is reached with a high suicide, then it is a death. Okay? And if a place where people speak the language has less risk of a suicide, then it is a life. So it is very important to know what happens when a language dies. It makes us less human beings. It is a matter of life and death, and also give us mental health. More importantly, or most importantly, high rates of suicides. Language also, language also, when you lose your language, then you also lose a unique vision of being human beings in other societies. When you are in society and they ask you, do you know your language? And you say, nope, I don't know. Some people may ask, why? How do you lose your language? Okay. Some people say, oh, okay, they don't want to feel offended. Now, when you leave, your mind is going to think, oh, I wish I knew my language. And the worst part when you are in the classrooms where they ask you to um, to write about your cultures in your language, and they ask you to mention a few words in your language. What does this one mean in English? What does this mean in your language? And you don't know your language, you feel isolated, and your brains, feel guilty. Your brains feel disappointed. Okay, so losing your language affects you psychologically and also actually makes you look less human beings by other people in other societies. So it is very important to keep your cultures, your traditions, and your language. People become stateless, as I mentioned before. You don't know your language, you become stateless. Okay, you also lose your wisdom, the wisdom, natural wisdom, because your language, your native language, is a natural language. So if you lose it, then you lose the knowledge, the wisdom, the dignity of your heritage, and of course, you lose how you would thrive in the world. So it is very important that keep your language no matter where you go. Now, what about culture and tradition? These four things are interrelated. Somebody, actually two people that I quoted here, the Santo Brizzi and Clifford Gizzard or Giz, says this. They said this: the human beings on the earth are still alive because of traditions and cultures. And I'm going to repeat: the human beings on the earth are still alive because of traditions and cultures. This means without cultures and traditions, human being would have not been alive. They would have not been still alive. This is what these two guys have meant to say. Culture and traditional, culture and tradition are extremely important to human life because of the following. One, they define people's peace of mind and well-being. They reflect people's values, beliefs, and aspirations. They define people's nationality, identity, and integrity. They enable people to survive as species. And that means if no culture and traditions, no human survive on the earth. So it is very important to keep your tradition, your language. Your cultures and tradition also provide answers to our basic needs or basic problems. For example, in your culture, you know how to discover shelter, how to make a house, how to live. You know how to, to discover food, and you know how to discover clothes. Your traditions and cultures also guides you everyday life, and they also united us. Cultures and traditions teach us way of life, way of living, and way of humanity. So cultures and traditions are very important. Cultures and traditions also teach us about our history and how we pass those histories down to the next generation. Cultures and traditions unite a society and its people. For example, if people of Puerto Rico in the United States come out every year and celebrate their festivals, thousands of them come out on the street and celebrate their traditions, their cultures. People who are not Puerto Ricans would come and watch them and would definitely know that these are Puerto Ricans. That day, every Puerto Rican comes out and goes and celebrate who they are. That is a part of unity. And that's what also shows them who they are. They are Puerto Ricans. So it is very important that please keep your traditions and your tradition, your cultures, no matter where you live. Cultures also define who people were, and that's our ancestors. Who people were means our ancestors. Who people are mean us, like myself, you who are still alive, your parents, and who people will be, and that is our children and the next generation. A places where cultures and traditions are existing, they have low divorce cases. I'm going to repeat, a place where cultures and traditions exist, they have very low divorces. Marriages don't break because traditional and cultural rules and laws protect marriages. In opposite, a society where cultures and traditions are lost, nothing protects marriages. And there is a very high divorce in those kind of places. Do you want that? No, because divorce itself also affect your children. And I'm going to come to that. What happens if people loses their cultures and traditions in life? This is one thing that you're going to feel. And listen to what happened. Why it's important to keep your cultures and traditions. And if you lose them, what's going to happen to you? People lose their nationality, people lose their ethnicity, people lose their religion, people lose their social economic classes, people lose other distinct traditional customs. And when you lose your cultures and traditions, here is what happened to you. It becomes difficult for other people to know who you are, and for other people also to know where you belong to. Another reason, when you lose your cultures and traditions in your life, you become what you are, and your children become what they would be. And this, get this one clearly, who you are and what you are totally different things. Who you are defines your origin. Who you are defines your identity, defines your language, defines your tradition. It defines where you come from. But what you are, it becomes something else. It's not who you are now. For example, if I forget my language is Monjang or Dinka, I forget my culture, I forget my traditions, and I only know English. And if I go back to my society where I came from, I would not be able to speak to people clearly. They will not understand me. And if I have to date a girl, they will not accept me because they feel that I'm no longer in the society. What language am I going to tell the girl that I love her? If I say in English, she will not understand. Okay? Now to them, I become what? I'm not who. And that is very important to keep your cultures and traditions. Of course, and traditionals, cultures and traditions, when they get lost in your life, of course, you lose your origin, you lose your language, you lose your identity, and you lose who you are. And you need to keep to be who you are. Losing traditions and cultures also result in a very bad relations and marriages. And I said before in the previous slide, shows when you lose your language, when you lose your cultures, your traditions, divorce is very high. And you can see right now, United States, if we talk about my community, 90% of families are broken. Since we came to United States at different time, 90% of family marriages have broken. Simply because we transform from our cultures, our traditions, into American way of life. But we have actually remained between not maintaining our culture and not adopting American culture properly. And because we are hanging between the two, we have nothing guiding us. The only result, divorce, 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 divorce. And that's why now children are very disconnected with their cultures. Children are very disconnected with their languages. Children are very disconnected with their traditions. Children are very disconnected with everything they deserved to learn about their origin, their culture, their traditional, and their way of life. It is because we have given up our beautiful rules and laws of our traditions and cultures. When we don't have cultures, we don't have traditions, we don't practice all of this, as a result in this unity among the people and societies that we live in. And you can see now in our communities, we always have problems. You may disagree with me, but it's true that we don't have cultures. For example, in Dinka culture, you cannot talk to women rudely as a man. Because if you do that, girls will run away from you. Even the parents of the girl will not allow you to marry that girl because you don't respect women. At the same times, women cannot talk to men rudely because they're not going to marry their daughters because the moms of these daughters are bad woman. Why would I marry from there? When we have those laws, when we have those traditional beliefs and practices, that was why we had a very united community. We had a low divorce rates, the divorce rates, and we had a very low bad relationships and broken marriages. But since that we let our traditions, our cultures go, that's why now in the Western world, 90% of marriages have broken. And we have this unity among ourselves. People who have lost their cultures and traditions, they also lost their humanity. And of course, the researchers say this, not me, that people who have lost their cultures, traditions, they start behaving like devils. Sorry to say that. That's what the finding says, and that's what the finding find out. And that has been examples of our community. Sometimes we behave like devils. We don't do things that necessarily we should do to maintain who we are. People loses their values and their mankind ends. Definitely. Let me go back here. What does it mean to start behaving like devils? When you lose your cultures, you lose your traditions, you lose your language, you lose your identity, nothing guides you. Now you see that now we have uh, we have many suicide going on in our communities. I'm going to give you a very quick example. Last year we saw in social media a girl killed a boy in Juba, so-called boyfriend or girlfriend. In any culture, in South Sudan, no matter which tribe in South Sudan, first of all, when you are dating a girl, there's no quarrels. And when a girl is being dated, she never even have any quarrels with a man. But because people drop their cultures, they drop their traditionals way of life, they adopted what so-called boyfriend. And the girl who killed her boyfriend felt that she owned that man because of girlfriendship, something that does not exist in her culture. Because she adopted that. She adopted different people cultures, not her culture. What did she do? She killed the boy because the boy cheated on her. That's what she said. The term cheating alone is the wrong term. There's nothing so called cheating in a relationship. I disagree with that. Okay? But if that girl maintained her cultures, traditions, she would have been shamefully saying, no, I can't do this. But because she totally lost that culture and she adopted that different culture, what did she do? She killed someone that is not her husband. And even if that was her husband, she had no right to kill her, to kill him. Or even a man, even if that's your wife, you have no right to kill your wife. Is that not a devil behavior? That's an example. In this case, when people lose their cultures, they lose their cultures, their traditions, then you lose humanity. You lose humanity. And when you lose humanity, what are the results? You behave like devils. And that's an example. Societies where there are no cultures and traditions, they are looked upon by other societies who strongly hold their cultures and traditions as inhuman or less human beings. So it is very important. If you're watching this video, it is very important. It doesn't matter whether you are Dinka, or you are Nuer, or you are whatever, or you are in Africa, or you're white, or red, or black, whatever. Keep your cultures, keep your traditions are very important. What can be done to keep our cultures, language, identity, and tradition alive? We want to keep them alive because when we keep them alive, we are also alive, and our children are alive, and generation to come is going to be alive. So I encourage people, especially parents, to adopt what is called home language. Home language is your language, a native language. Make sure you use native language at home every day. Communities that do not have festival days, it is very important to create cultural and traditional festival days where you would come together, unite, and then you perform your traditions, your cultures, so that the kids can learn from that. If your language dies completely, there is something called reversing language shift. You can think of how you can reverse. It depends on you. It depends on how you lose your language. Okay, but here is an example. Here is an example. To keep the language alive, traditional, you need to create curriculums in that language. Curriculums about the cultures, curriculums about language, curriculum about traditions, and curriculum about identity. Put them together in the native language and promote them in your local community. That can promote your cultures, your language, your identity, and your traditions. And that will also give opportunities and benefits to the children to learn and other people to learn about you. You can also be a teacher to your children at home. Don't let your kids be teachers at home. It is you to be a teacher to your children at home. Teach them every day. Teach them the following. First, avoid your children being teachers to you. Please avoid your children being teachers to you. If your children come from schools and then they start asking you in English, for example, tell them, no, 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 no. Tell me in Dinka, if you are Dinka. Tell me in where. Tell me in Spanish. Tell me in Arabic. If your kids come to school, come back from school, and then they start asking you in English, and then you respond in English, what are you doing? You are leading them to losing their language. If the kids come from school and start speaking in English, tell them, no, 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 no. One of the rules is English outside, English at school. Okay? But here is your native language, your home language. Whatever home language they speak, Dinka, Nuer, or it doesn't matter. It is very important you yourself as a parent or parents to be teachers to your children at home, not children to be teachers to you at home. Also, which is the part of what I mentioned, keep away other languages from home. Keep away completely, completely. Keep them away. Only keep your language at home. Only your own language. It is also simple to set up some rules for kids to follow and also motivate the kids. For example, if your kids, for example, if they are drinkers and they come home, they start talking in English, they don't know, maybe they lose their language. I mean, they lose their language, they don't speak their language to themselves. Set up the rule says this: hey, my children, this is the rule. When you come home, speak Dinka. If you don't know, try, ask me. And if you do perfectly, I will give you this. I promise I will buy for you this. Motivate them. Give them something that can give them hope. And if you tell the children like that, they will do that. Because children follow what you tell them. Okay? It is also to use our elders, our great-grandmothers, special great-mothers, because language is for women anyway. Is our is mother language come from our mothers. Okay? So it is very important also to use grandmoms to stay with children all the times. Okay? Tell the stories about your past in your language. And then always let them sing the songs. Okay? Talk about traditions. Talk about your cultures. And if you have a chance, please take them back to their original country so that they can go there and learn new things and get connected with people there. Okay? So, now, what is so important about this? One, do not lose the language. Keep your language, keep your traditional, keep your culture, and keep your way of identity. It is very important, and I'm encouraging Sudanese communities, whether being from South, North, West, whatever language you speak, create a curriculum in that language. Promote within local community. Do you know why Jewish people or Israeli people don't lose their language? It is because wherever they go, the first thing they do, they set home rules. They follow their culture, they follow their tradition, they follow their beliefs, their practice. At the same time, they promote Jewish language in communities and in schools. So you need to create a curriculum in your native language. Promote it. You don't need to be millions and millions of people to do that. It can be 5, 2, 3, or even 20. And if you do that, the beauty part of Western world, whenever you come up with something, they enjoy it. They enjoy it. They will not say, oh, no, 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 we don't know. They want to learn your language. We as educators encourage people even to go to school. If you have a curriculum that shows your cultures, your traditions, your language, your identity, they can be even adapted in school as a part of curriculum to be taught in school. So it is very important to do that wherever you are right now. If you are in the United States or you are in Canada, it doesn't matter. Make sure that you create a curriculum that promote your language in a place where you are. Here is the conclusion what I'm going to tell you. Do not forget that keeping your language, keeping your culture, keeping your identity, and keeping your traditions represent you. It represents our brand and it represents our identity. And when you keep this also, CLIT, I call it CLIT again, CLIT, culture, language, identity, and tradition. When you keep this, we pass them to our children and from our children to their children, and that is from generation to the next generation. They will not die. Remember, people who lost their cultures, their languages, their identities, and their traditions also lost their history, their origin, and their way of life. And this is what they say: people who do not have cultures, do not have languages, do not have identity, do not have traditions, those people become like rootless trees. If a tree does not have roots, would that tree stand? It will not. It will fall. And if this tree falls down, it gets dry and dies. If you don't have your culture, you don't have your tradition, you don't have your identity, you don't have your language, remember, you don't have main roots that can hold you to stand. You will fall soon. Keeping CLIT, keeping our cultures, keeping our languages, keeping our identity, and keeping our tradition also reduce divorces. And get this clearly, please. Nobody love his or her marriage to be, but sometimes our marriages are broken simply because of our desires. But if those desires are actually controlled by cultures, language, laws, natural laws, they will lead to divorce. And because that we don't have that, we easily can break marriages because of our choice and because of our being misled by what we learn out of our culture. So please, very important to keep our cultures, languages, identity, and traditions. When we keep our CLIT, which is culture, language, identity, and traditions, we must be able to educate our children. And when we educate them, they will also keep on educating their future children. Please, let's keep who we are. Let's keep who we will be. Let's not try to become what we are. Let's try to remain who we are. If we keep our CLIT, we will hand them down to our children, and our children will hand them down to their children, and on until to the next generations, until when God called the whole world to the end. I am very excited to present this thing to you, wherever you are listening, wherever you are watching. Please, if you are here for the first time, Google my name, Dr. Ding Ding, subscribe. So next time when I present another video, you will definitely um, get notified. I know some people may like to have questions. I don't know if I'm live right here. But anyway, if you find this video later on, please promote it. Promote it, send it to anybody. And I'm so glad to present this one to you today. If you have comments on on this topic, please do so, because your comments will guide me for the next presentations. Today is Sunday, is November 27, 2022. Happy Sunday. May God bless you wherever you are with your family. And may God bless you and may God guide you in the good health to next week and to your entire life. Again, I'm Dr. Ding Ding, the founder of Aiden Care and executive director at Dr. Ding Ding Foundation. I'm so happy to present this one to you, and I'm so happy that you're watching this presentation. And I would like to close this show with a thanks to the president of AWEIL Community Association USA, Mr. Budyal, and his General Secretary, Joseph Yak Yak, who invited me yesterday to present this topic to AWEIL people. This is my third time of presenting about the CLIT, to people. And this is a beautiful thing when you know something and people call you uh, to come and present what you know so they learn from it. I'm also encourage other communities, if you have come across this video, if you want me to share with you about the cause and the death of CLIT, then I'll be very happy to come and present to you as well. So God bless you all, and may God bless the whole entire world. We want this world free to be free from every problem, whether it's small problem or big, doesn't matter. If God exists, let's ask Him to free us from every problem. And I hope these presentations find you in a good health. Please promote it. If you are watching right now, promote it to other people. If you're not watching and you get it later on, then please promote it as well. Let other people see it. God bless you. Thank you, and have a great day or great night or great morning, wherever you may be.